Hi there, my name is Ellen Harrigan, and I'd like to present my final presentation or project to you, Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing, Written Response and Presentation Project. The purpose of this unit is to have students build and develop their reading comprehension skills, as well as continue practicing their written expression. This supports oral language, specifically the text comprehension and written expression category. I'd also like to promote students' learning by reflecting and providing and receiving peer feedback, as well as continue growing as a learner by having opportunities to present and dive into technology. This is supported by the depths of knowledge theory, and the goal is to have students analyze, evaluate, and create to foster their own learning. Looking through a smaller lens, the learners that will be participating in this unit are fourth grade students aged 9 to 10. The classroom is filled with both male and female students. The students live in middle to upper class communities, and students' background knowledge varies per student. However, every student has read or listened to at least one realistic fiction novel. Some of the students are English language learners. Some participate in the Response to Intervention or RTI program. These students receive either Tier 2 or Tier 3 support, and that support varies per student. And then some of the students qualify for special education and receive support for reading. Something I like to think about is fair isn't everyone getting the same thing. Fair is everyone getting what they need in order to be successful. This is a lesson I like to weave in throughout the year to ensure understanding for all students. To piggyback off of that quote, I'd like to look at technology and how it supports different students. So all students will use either tablets, iPads, laptops, or desktop computers, and that's at the Tier 1 level. Some students will have the option to use a video recording app where they can record themselves to present, and that would be Tier 2 support, where some students need that type of support. And then a few students will have access to assistive technology to complete their presentations. And assistive technology includes CoWriter, SnapRead, and voice typing, and that would be at the Tier 3 or their most intensive level of support. Let's now dive into the unit plan. Day 1 is where students brainstorm together and create lists about what they're most excited about being in fourth grade, what they're nervous about being in fourth grade, or anything else that they would like to write about that they have a connection to being a fourth grader. Next, the teacher will read aloud Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing, written by Judy Blume. The goal is for students to make connections between the text and the reader. This is a Common Core state standard that fourth graders are expected to have mastered. The teacher will provide a few prompts after a couple of chapters, but then the class will have to work together to create their own reading responses. I like having students create their own reading responses because it promotes the idea of student ownership and student engagement. Day 3 is when the whole class works together and reviews the list that was created from the prior day. The teacher will now model what a reading response could look like, and she'll model this in front of the entire class. The class will vote and decide which prompt to answer. Again, that collaboration piece is here, and the student ownership piece, because they get to choose which prompt they'd like to answer. Day 4, the teacher is going to take a mid-break from the reading response as a whole group and go into a mini lesson on how to write complete sentences. Now, most students know how to write a complete sentence, but being the beginning of the school year, it's a nice refresher. There will be an anchor chart created, and it will be displayed all year round, and it will be a nice visual or reference for students. Then students will work on creating a reading response in partners to emphasize that collaboration piece. On day 5, the teacher will introduce the lesson by reviewing day 4's anchor lesson. Then the students will practice writing their own reading response independently. The teacher will meet with students one-on-one and conference with students. This is a really important step because the teacher will be able to create or gain some summative data and help ensure student accuracy and student comprehension of the text and the assignment. Days 6 and 7. The teacher will introduce and allow students time to work on their reading response presentations. The teacher will go over and answer questions about the checklist or rubric. She will have samples of different projects that receive different scores on the rubric. This way, the students are able to see what a 3 would look like, what a 2 would look like, and what a 1 or 0 would look like on the rubric. Any questions would be answered during this time. Once all the questions are answered, the students will dive in and begin creating their presentations. On day 8, the students will present their reading response projects to their peers in small groups. Classmates will provide peer feedback to each presenter. Once everyone presents, the projects will be uploaded to the class blog so more people have access to the projects. I think it's important to have classmates provide peer feedback because of a few reasons. 1, it ensures that students are listening and engaged in the presentation. And 2, I think it's important for students to learn how to give feedback appropriately to one another. Some handouts to help students along the way is a checklist. I'm going to click here to make it nice and big so we can all see it. The checklist says, I know my reading response is complete when I have checked all of these categories. The categories are on the far left. There's a column for what I checked, the writer, my partner checked, and then my teacher checked. So the column I checked is to ensure that students have independence and a way to proofread and make sure what they have is what they want. My partner checked is, again, for that proofreading stage, and as well promotes the idea of collaboration. And my teacher checked is a nice way for a teacher to collect some formative data as well. The next handout would be the rubric. The rubric is set up very similar to the checklist. It has the categories on the far left, editing, presentation, and then speaking and presenting. Again, the 4 categories are going to be explicitly taught throughout the unit, but there's the 0-point column, the 1-point column, the 2 points column, and the 3 points column. At the bottom, there's the total points, and of course, comments and feedback would be provided to every student. Here is a student sample of a final project. Again, this project has some parameters provided by the rubric, but students can get as creative and as in-depth as they wish to get. It would start off by an opening slide. Next, the student would include the response that they're answering, their answer. This question asks the reader or the writer to have at least 2 reasons. So here's reason number 1, reason number 2, and then a visual to describe their answer. Making that connection between visual and written is a good strategy for students who may not be as motivated to write or struggle with the writing process. Assessments to go along with this unit plan for formative data could be the written reading responses, the small group and partner work, the mini conferences that the teacher has, peer feedback forms, and the checklist. The summative data that can be collected is through the presentation, and you can use the rubric to help guide your summative data. I think this unit really models the constructivism learning theory because students construct and design their own learning. Students develop their problem-solving skills because you're fostering the independence. Students are able to cultivate their creativity because it's weaved into the presentation. And students are expected to draw realistic connections and formulate conclusions based off the connections formed due to reading a realistic fiction novel. To conclude, I'd like to end with a quote by Albert Einstein. Creativity is intelligence having fun, and creativity is something I'm really passionate about, and I'd like to ignite with all of my students, and something I'd like to have them practice and really enjoy doing throughout their 4th grade year, because this really promotes learning and the idea of having fun while learning.